PC and I did not plug in one USB, which was my mic. So, all right, we are back. Welcome. This is episode 150 of Kalibrated Live with Scott. I am Scott, of course. Sorry for that little hiccup we had there. That's my bad. I just did not plug in one USB when I moved my PC. So all is fixed now. All is well. We have a ton to talk about today. We have Pakistan versus India. We're going to talk about what's going on over in the subcontinent, that direction. We are going to be talking about, is my mic working? Please tell me my mic's working. Okay. Hello. Oh, make sure it's working. Hello. Okay, there we go. My thing wasn't working, so I thought it might not have been on. All right, guys. We are back. Like I said, episode 150. Russian forces are now entering into the Dnepropetrovsk Oblast, so we are going to discuss that today. We have a ton of map updates to go over. Like I said, India, Pakistan, we have some Israel news, we have some China-US news. There is just a ton going on, and I appreciate all of your patience. I said that I was going to do a live stream on Friday. In the middle of that live stream, India decided to attack Pakistan. Pakistan then retaliated. I just decided that I was going to stall until all of that was finished up, and then I was going to approach the topic in totality. And then on top of that, we were also in the middle of the victory parade ceasefire. I wanted to see how that played out and how the negotiations around that sort of played out. And now we do know that as well. So we're going to just dive headfirst into all of that. I wanted to start by saying thank you to everybody being in here. I appreciate all of you. This is going to be sort of, I think, a highlight for my live streams because we got, it's a Sunday, everybody's at home, and I did it sort of at a time where we can get the Euro Bros and the Ameri Bros in here. So it is a union of my two separate live stream times kind of coming together, and I'm very excited about that. If you guys are new here, please do not forget to click that subscribe button. If you are also new here, leave a like, leave a comment. It helps me with the algorithm. That is the easiest way you guys can support me. Remember that if you have questions that you want answered on live, answered live on the stream, you can always ask those through super chats. I will answer every single super chat that I get, no matter what it says, no matter how stupid it is. So is it loud now? Is it loud? I can turn it down a little bit. Thank you guys. Sorry, I'm telling you that I'm having some technical difficulties here. Tell me if this is better volume for you guys. I'm curious. Hello. That might be a little quiet. Hello. Is that too loud? We'll see how that comes back out. All right, everybody. Good evening from Spain. 5 past midnight over here. Welcome in from Spain, guys. Good to see everybody around. Okay. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Like I said, I moved my audio setup and I moved my PC a little bit, so I didn't plug everything back in exactly as it was supposed to. So if there is any disruptions, any bugs, audio, video, just let me know in the comments. All right, guys. Let's go ahead and get into it. So first and foremost, I just wanted to talk about the Victory Day ceasefire. Before we get into the updates, before we dive into everything, I just wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for what's going on politically in Ukraine and with Russia. So Putin unilaterally announced a ceasefire by the Russian forces that Ukraine was welcome to acknowledge if they so choose. I had talked about this previously. This is just the ball back into the other court sort of deal. And we've been seeing this back and forth. Each side is trying to make each other look like the blockage to peace, right? So Putin is the one disrupting the peace process. Zelensky is the one disrupting the peace process. It's really just a back and forth political game. And as you can tell, there have been no negotiations. There have been no steps in the right direction. In fact, it seems like things are going in the wrong direction. We had Europe come out and basically threaten Russia. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. There's just a lot going on, and it seems that we are so far away from peace, but everybody's talking about it. So I'm just going to kind of lay out what's going on there in my personal opinion. So Putin comes out and basically announces this unilateral Russian ceasefire in Ukraine over Victory Day, right? Over the weekend for the parade and everything. There's a lot of foreign leaders coming into Moscow to watch the parade. We had representatives from Iran, representatives from North Korea. There were also Xi Jinping from China did attend, which is quite a big deal. He is sort of a known homebody. Likes to stay inside of China. So him coming out during an active conflict into another nation's capital, which is regularly targeted by drone strikes, is kind of a big deal. It says a lot about where the Chinese are in terms of their relations with the Russians. And all in all, the weekend was rather peaceful. There were some ceasefire violations by both sides. The Russians basically said that if the Ukrainians continue to fight, the Russians will defensively respond. We saw a few Russian missile strikes, but way less than normal, way less glide bomb strikes, and almost no Russian assaults throughout that period of time. And really the most important aspect going into this ceasefire was, one, Putin trying to make it seem like Zelensky is the issue when it comes to the peace process. He gets to go up there in his late night speech, which he did immediately following the ceasefire. And he talks about how, Ukraine violated the ceasefire 9,000 times, this drones, this, whatever, he gets to do his little propaganda spiel about Ukraine not abiding by the unilateral ceasefire that was basically a non-starter to begin with. Zelensky had openly said they're not going to do a 3-day ceasefire. Just like Putin has openly said they're not going to do a 30-day ceasefire, which is what Zelensky and the West are trying to push incessantly. And coming to that, going into this weekend, the West and Zelensky basically came forward and said, we will not abide by a 3-day ceasefire. That does nothing. We want a 30-day ceasefire. Putin has already come out and said previously that he's not going to do a 30-day ceasefire. It doesn't make any strategic sense for the Russians. He's absolutely right. And in that period of time, that 30 days, all that's going to happen is Ukraine is going to continue to get rearmed and continue mobilizing and try to restabilize themselves. It just doesn't make any sense for the Russians to pause right now in any sense of the word, unless it is a guaranteed peace that is going to be carried all the way through to its conclusion, which, again, is not going to happen. The Europeans came on the back of this 30-day ceasefire proposal and basically said, if you don't go along with it, Putin, we are going to fully support Ukraine. The new German chancellor talked about sending Taurus missiles, so what and so forth. We're going to get into their craziness because there was a small event that happened today with Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, I believe, and the German chancellor. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. If you guys know, it was a little bit of a party time for those boys. But this threat, on the back of a supposed peace process is not how you get Moscow and the Kremlin to move. They're not going to be moved by external pressure. This is a known fact about the political establishment in Moscow, especially right now, especially after the 3 years that we've seen. They are not going to be pressured by an outside influence. If they agree themselves to some sort of peace process, that's entirely different, but it's not going to come from sanctions. It's not going to come from weapons deliveries. It's not going to come from Europe, especially. It didn't work when it was coming from the US. It's not going to work when it's coming from Europe. Putin then comes out after the ceasefire. Like I said, pretty relaxed. Ukraine tried to do some incursions into Kursk. They did end up sending 500 drones, which is one of the larger, maybe the largest Ukrainian drone strike into Russia. And we saw almost no success from that at all. There was one drone that hit one building, I believe, in the Kursk region, an official government building, and then that was pretty much it, which is pretty substantial considering the total number of drones that were sent. Again, I do not have any proof of 500 drones. That's just what the Russian MOD said. But we did have confirmed reports of Ukrainian drones being launched into the airspace and air defense working on the 8th. So that did happen. Putin came out after this ceasefire, made everybody stay up basically until about 2 a.m. Moscow time, came out and gave a little, I don't know, offer to Zelensky. It does seem like this offer that Putin made, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, is designed to remove the U.S. from the equation altogether. Putin basically came out and said, Zelensky, if you want to talk, we can do direct negotiations in Istanbul on Thursday. So immediate, give no time for planning, no time for anything. Come meet my negotiating team. Your delegation will meet my delegation in Istanbul, like we did in 2022. And this time we won't have Europe and the United States breathing down your throat or breathing down your neck to, pressure you into continue fighting, whatever. Obviously, again, another non-starter by Putin. And this is what I'm talking about these political games. When you listen to what these sides are offering each other, they always include a single point that is a non-starter. For Zelensky, for Putin, when he was talking about it, the non-starter for Ukraine was no NATO membership, right? That's a huge thing for the Ukrainians. That's how they see themselves surviving, is that NATO membership. No weapons deliveries to Ukraine during any sort of ceasefire. Again, not going to happen. Zelensky, that's a non-starter for him. And even the act of negotiating is illegal in Ukraine for Zelensky to do. So again, it's these weird non-starters that have been put in place by Ukraine themselves, or Russia knowing Ukraine is not going to be able to do that because of their Western backers or whatever, makes the offer to make Zelensky look like the issue, right? Zelensky then comes out and does this 30-day ceasefire, which, by the way, before Zelensky even said anything, Putin had come out that week and said, we are not doing a 30-day ceasefire. It does not do anything for us strategically. It only helps the Ukrainians. And then immediately after, it'll just continue. We don't want that. We want a lasting peace. So the Russians are holding firm. The Ukrainians are holding firm. Guys, I don't think there's going to be any negotiations or any peace process. And I've been saying that for 6 months. And we've just watched it continue to roll like a hamster in a wheel, not going anywhere, not producing anything. And that's how I believe that's how it's going to stay. So that's sort of the situation with the ceasefire and the negotiated settlement where we're at. Zelensky has yet, I believe, to confirm or deny that he will meet. No, I'm sorry. He did confirm. He said that he would go and meet Putin in Istanbul if by tomorrow a 30-day ceasefire is agreed upon. Again, restating that the 30-day ceasefire is the hitch to this working, where Putin has already said they're not going to do a ceasefire, right? You don't stop applying pressure during negotiations. That's not how it works. That's not how negotiations work. And really what Putin is offering to Zelensky, he came out and he said there will be no preconditions for this. Previously there were preconditions for negotiations to even start. He's saying there's no preconditions, and a lot of people are looking at that and saying, "Oh no, what is Putin doing? Is he cucking out or something like that?" No, there's going to be conditions. There are just no preconditions. So what this is really going to look like, if anybody actually goes to Istanbul, is a capitulation meeting where they're going to basically lay out what the Russians are going to do and what they're going to need from the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians are just going to end up saying no. So again, I don't really think this is going to work out, but we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Time will tell on that. I'm just going to jump right into the updates. I'm glad we have as many people in here as we do today. We're seeing a lot of people, so I'm very excited about that. All right. Head over to the old map, shall we? All right. So we will start in the Kursk region. Like I said, the map has now been updated. The Kursk region here is completely under Russian control, right? So Kursk has now been completely cleared for the most part. There might still be a small Ukrainian incursion over here, although I'm pretty sure they've been pushed out. So there's almost no part of the Kursk region besides less than a mile or less than a kilometer over the border where Ukrainians are still maintaining any positions. So this region is pretty much closed up. There were reports that Russian forces had moved into Marine right here, just in the Belgorod region, but still connected to the Sumy region. And outside of that, I think that there was a small Russian advance here that I have yet to do, but nothing significant in the Sumy border region as of right now. Okay. Moving down, nothing in the Kharkov region. This northern Kharkov area has been very slow. Since the Oskel bridge had happened, I'm almost certain that the Ukrainians have rotated a significant number of units to this region, potentially from Sumy itself, since Sumy sort of wrapped up. And that's why you're not seeing as much Russian movement here, but also we're just not seeing a lot of Russian assaults. So it's not like the Russians are just hitting their heads against the wall and not making progress, which they do sometimes. But rather there's just a lack of significant activity in this region right now. All right, moving down to the Limansky front. You can see here, Russian forces have captured Nove totally, which happened in the last update. They have since then pushed out into the village of Lipove. If you guys don't know, there is a string of fortifications right here that the Russians have now entirely captured, and there is no significant fortifications back behind here in the same consistency or capability that we saw right around Nove. So this is going to put increased pressure on Liman. We could definitely see a Russian offensive in this direction. Remember, I talked about Liman and its vital location for the Ukrainians. If the Russians are able to cut these roads here, they will cut all supply into the Sobyansky forestry and will put incredible pressure on the Seversk salient. So this is something that I think is a secondary goal of the Russians right now. I mean, it's a primary goal. It would be awesome if it happened, but there's going to be so much Ukrainian resistance to get to Liman because of how important it is that this area will probably not see a ton of movement outside of the Russians continuing to move up in the Oskel region. I would sort of separate the Oskel region up here from the Liman front right here. Okay, moving down to Bilohorivka, which is not really Bilohorivka anymore. Russian forces have pushed out and are now halfway through the village of Hihorivka, as well as capturing this important high ground and trench network that runs along this tree line. Guys, remember, I talked about it. The Russians are almost to the end of this tree line right here. Once they do that, they will have all of the high ground heading into Seversk. There is high ground behind Seversk, but Seversk is in the low ground, so it's going to make it difficult to keep supplied. The Russians are going to likely start the Battle of Seversk sometime in the next couple of months. Again, this is an area where Bilohorivka was so strong. They've now lost that. The next breakthrough in this region is going to be much harder for the Ukrainians to defend. Okay, moving down to the Toretsk front, or the garbage front, as we like to call it. And guys, would you look at that? We have another hot pocket. This is something that this front has been developing incredibly fast. I don't know if you guys remember, but it used to be basically down here. Now we're seeing the Russians almost completely capture this area, all the way up to the 0504 and up to this reservoir. Once they get on this reservoir and this lake, the Ukrainians will be forced to retreat behind the reservoir onto the higher ground back behind it. And guys, if you look here, you can see I have actually legitimately labeled out almost every significant fortification in this region, and they're all in the pit of this salient now. So get ready for the front to level out around Zyora and then into Torsk here. Like I said, what we can expect in the near future is something along this green line right here. And as you can see, my earlier predictions. And this is almost like a year ago now. I think I predicted this. I said when Chasiv Yar started moving and when this southern flank started moving, you're going to see the Russians push out in this exact direction. And you can see that this is almost exactly what the Russians are doing. And then over here as well, the Russians are doing the exact same thing. So the predictions are at least semi-accurate. Obviously, timeline is completely off. You can't predict a timeline because the Russians will push one area and then go push a different area. But very, very close. The Russians are pushing in the general direction, which I had mapped out. And then this is the green line here is the line where the Ukrainians should get behind to defend. And as you can see, it follows the river right here that runs through this area. Okay, get rid of that. Oops, not that, this. Get rid of that. All right, so the two advances here, just so you guys know, Russian forces have just pushed out of this pocket and have entered into the village of Romanivka. And then over on this edge of the salient, Russian forces have pushed out from Tarasivka and have captured and then pushed further out of the village of Oleksandropol. So yeah, this pocket is becoming a very, very bad location for the Ukrainians, and it does not appear that they have significant manpower to cover this area now. This is one of the first areas of the front that you're seeing really move just due to complete lack of available manpower. Yeah, so very, very, very large movements here, and this is a very big area to watch. Soon, the fighting will be around Konstantinivka. Chasiv Yar is going to fall soon. This pocket here over here, Bilohorivka and Dilivka, is also going to fall along the canal once the Russians cross the canal. Just an insane amount of pressure is about to be put on Konstantinivka. All right, moving down to the Pokrovsk front. Oh, I didn't do this one. I think I'm just going to leave it gray because this kind of keeps going back and forth. There were reports that Lysivka has been captured, although with the defensive fortification right behind it, until the Russians actually push out, capture Lysivka and Sukiyar, you're not going to likely see a lot of movement here. I've talked about this. The Ukrainians have the shortest supply, the much better defensive locations, so it's really hard to push into the city from this direction. Moving down to the southwest, however, Russian forces have entered into the southern end of Pokrovsk through Zvorove and Leontovyachy. Okay, that one's a little tough. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, so Russian forces have entered into the Pokrovsk locality. It is yet to be seen if they have pushed any further. The main goal here is going to be this Terkon. If they can get on this waste industrial heap, they will then have a lot more control over the southern portion of this city. And then once they force the Ukrainians off of this, assaults across these fields into the city are going to become much more effective and logical, I guess, because right now you're just beating your head against a wall if you're assaulting here. All right. How's everybody doing? Is everybody doing good? Good. I'm glad. Glad everybody's doing good. I got a lot of people in here right now. All right. All right, guys, this is the bulk of the updates. The Russians are moving very, very fast in this area. Remember, I told you that once the Russians got through, the Seladove area and made it back into this area behind Seladove and below Pokrovsk, the fortifications are much thinner, right? And really, what you're looking at right here, I've added these fortifications in the Dnepropetrovsk region. What you're looking at is really the last significant line before nothing. And I mean this honestly. I went in and I tried to map as much as I could. I think there's 3 little lines right here, although I couldn't figure out exactly where they were. And then there's this fortification. And this is all I could find out in this area. So it's a very sparsely populated, thinly fortified region of Ukraine. and the Russians are about to break into it. Wait for my map to update. There you go. As you can see here, Russian forces have pushed out of Novo Alexandrivka, have captured the village entirely, have captured Yusempenivka, and are pushing right up towards the Dnepropetrovsk Oblast here. In fact, if we look here, Russian forces are only, less than a half mile, probably less than 1 kilometer away from the Dnepropetrovsk region, which likely means, and we also have reports that Russian deep reconnaissance groups have entered the Dnepropetrovsk region and are actively operating. And it makes sense because if we come down here, you can see that in quite a wide area, the Russians are also less than a mile right here. So gray zone is definitely extended into this oblast. As you can see, there's not much behind this line until you get to Novopavlivka. And what you very well could see right now is the first real breakthrough of the war. If the Russians are to commit anywhere, this is the area where I think I could see them committing the hardest, just because of the lack of roads for the Ukrainians to utilize, the lack of population centers. It is just the perfect place where you can rip open the front and force Ukrainian UAV crews, which are the only thing keeping the Ukrainian line together at this point, to get overrun, disperse, scatter. And then once that happens, once you achieve that breakthrough, the Russians will be able to exploit it, most definitely, and especially in this region. So shortly, here we'll look at another one of the predictions I made. Remember, I did so because this follows the river right here. That if you look at a topographical map, which I've done multiple times for you guys, you can. I'll do it again. Why not? Why not educate you? Why not? I have it open, so might as well. And I was looking right at what we were talking about. So perfect. You can see here, this is Pokrovsk right here. So the Russians are down behind Pokrovsk. You can see the Dnepropetrovsk borderline right there. Actually, let me come over here and make this bigger so you guys can see better. And here is Kharkov. The Russians have now pushed out, and I'll zoom in just a little bit so colors get a little bit better. You can see that my yellow cursor follows this low ground. Here is Velika Novosilka in the low ground. Obviously, you have Kharkov right here, which the river follows. And this sort of arch right here is where I have my yellow line drawn in, because I knew that the Russians were going to push into this area. And eventually, the Ukrainians were going to have to retreat back up onto this line, Udachne, to Mezova. And once that happens, the Russians are in the Dnepropetrovsk region. This, you can just see. You can see the difference here, guys. You can see the elevation back here. You can see the density of cities and villages. And then you come over here and look. It's okay. Well, this is not the best color to look at it in. Let me zoom out just a little bit. Let me see. There we go. So here you can see all of the high ground back over here in the Donetsk area, the massive urban it just extends. It's like one urban settlement after another, commie blocks everywhere, very difficult to push through. And then back here, very sparse, and these are very small farm villages. I mean, they're just 1-story houses, nothing substantial. This is the breakthrough point. This is where you can put a ton of pressure on the Ukrainian armed forces because they don't have the fortifications. Remember, when you are in a strong defensive location, defense is much easier, and you can really hold those strong positions for quite some time. And it requires a lot less manpower and troops. Now that the Russians are breaking into an undefended area where they're going to quickly be able to expand the front line and force the Ukrainians into a ton of movement, one, it's going to increase exposure for the Ukrainians, which increases attrition. It's also going to force a massive rotation from other areas of the front. And so you might not see a huge explosion into the Dnepropetrovsk region, but just the entering into it and the creation of a new hotspot is going to open up areas like Liman, like Kupiansk, like Sumy region. And when that happens, It's just this flex and pull, flex and pull, flex and pull. And I how can I explain this? Ukraine, the AFU was a rubber band, right? And that rubber band has a certain amount of elasticity, but the more you stretch it and you tear it, like the little micro tears and everything, it starts to get just looser and looser. And then it might not ever even snap, right? It'll just get so loose that it falls off. It is almost what might happen here. And that can happen across the map. So just be prepared for that. All right. Heading back over to my map for the last updates here. All right. So just for the updates, like I said, Russian forces have approached Novo-Mikhailivka, which is right on the Dnepropetrovsk Oblast. This advance is quite significant, totaling 10.4 square miles. Very, very, very large. I think that's, I can't remember. It's like 20 something square kilometers. 22, 23 square kilometers. Down here, we can see that the Russian forces have entered into this large fortification / defensive line around Trotsky and Horehove. And just to the south of that as well, Russian forces have advanced, basically leveled the line from Bondanivka all the way down to Bahatir, which they are now in. I am sorry if I butchered those names. You guys know me. I'm a classic name butcherer. We have two questions here. Dnepropetrovsk, here we come. Indeed, the Russians are there. They are inside of the oblast. So you are very correct, good sir. Welcome in the Iranian Putin. And here we go. It's amusing how Putin keeps flipping the script on Western ultimatums. The EU leaders keep trying to pin him down and end up looking silly. Yeah, I think the whole thing looks silly. I think arguing over this stuff is very silly. I think pretending like it matters who is the aggressor at this point is just a farce in and of itself. I think most people have their opinions made up and they're not really going to shift very much from those opinions at this point. So I don't get the point of being like, look how well this plays domestically, that I'm not the bad guy. Nobody cares. Everybody knows who's the bad guy, and that decision is not going to be changed. But yeah, he is playing their game right back at them, forcing them to definitely look silly. And yeah, I mean, the fact that they're having like these meetings all the time and they're achieving absolutely nothing is definitely a silly look. Whenever Putin comes out and says something, it always feels like, and this is part of being a dictator, if you will, a single authoritarian leader in a country, is you have the power to push policy to an end. Whereas, Europe, Germany is dealing with Britain, and Britain is dealing with France, and they're all dealing with Ukraine, and none of it ever works. So thank you guys for your questions. Okay. All right. So, yep, this is a ton of movement here. I think I totaled it. It was something like 9. I think within these updates right here, just on this front, it's something like 98 square kilometers have been captured since Monday. Since my update on Monday. So that's pretty intensive. And we could see a massive push towards Novopavlivka here soon. All right. And then the final update for today, Russian forces have advanced the front line from Novosilka towards Zelene Pole and Novopil here down in the southern corner of the map. Again, not a massive update, but just another advance out of the Velika Novosilka flower here. Okay. All right, guys. That is the map updates today. I wanted to just go over and read you guys this BBC article real fast. It just talks about the ceasefire and the negotiations, and I just wanted to point out some of the things from this because it's from the BBC, and I like to read opposition news because it tends to, I feel like the omissions that one side makes are much more important than the claims of another side. And so I'm constantly reading, any Russian news or Ukrainian news, Western news, always from an oppositional standpoint, looking for the omissions anywhere, because they, like I said, they usually tell you a lot more. All right. Zelensky challenges Putin to meet him after Trump demands Ukraine-Russia talks. So we talked about this. Zelensky basically saying, accept the 30-day ceasefire, and then you personally come meet me in Istanbul, which is a very funny thing for Zelensky to say, as if Zelensky is somehow going to be a part of the negotiating team. No, you send delegations. You don't send your president to talk. It's very odd. It's obvious that why he's doing it. He's trying to bait Putin into saying no, and then he's the blockage to peace, right? That's the whole deal. All right. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says he is ready to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin personally in Istanbul on Thursday for talks over ending the war. Personally, like Putin is going to make a trip last minute. Maybe he will. Maybe he'll just surprise all of us and the war will be over by Friday. But I highly doubt it. His post on X came shortly after Donald Trump demanded Ukraine agree to Putin's offer of a direct talk between the two countries in Turkey. Trump made that post on social media, and I was going to read it. In fact, I think I have it right here. Let's see. No, I do have it right here. I know I do because I posted it. Right here. Wait. The Trump tweet. That's what I was looking for, not the Zelensky tweet. Okay, here we go. So this is the Trump tweet, just so you guys have a reference for it. President Putin of Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end to the bloodbath. Bloodbath in all caps, just so you guys know. Ukraine should agree to this immediately. Immediately in all caps, by the way, just so you guys know. Immediately. At least they will be able to determine whether or not the deal is possible. And if it is not, European leaders and the U.S. will know where everything stands. So here we go, creating the pressure point for Putin, basically saying, if you don't accept this, everybody knows that you're the problem. Again, I roll, blah, blah, blah. I'm so tired of this shit. It's so annoying. Just get on with the war. Just get on with it. We all know that's what you want to do. Stop playing games. And can proceed accordingly. I'm starting to doubt that Ukraine will make a deal with Putin. No shit, bro. Who's too busy, Putin, who is too busy celebrating victory of World War II, which could not have been won, not even close, without the United States of America. Have the meeting now in all caps again. Okay. So that was the thing. I always think it's funny when he's like, America was the only one who won World War II after 20 million Russians died. Whatever. Very funny. I know that they sent a bunch of stuff through Lend-Lease, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. They had 20 million Russians running at them. They were, the Germans were not going to win that war. And Lend-Lease did not, it helped, but the Germans were not going to win. All right. Blah, blah, blah. He had earlier said, okay, there are no point to the killings, and I will be waiting on Putin in Turkey on Thursday personally, Zelensky wrote. Okay. Western powers called for a 30-day pause in fighting to begin on Monday after European leaders spearheading the so-called Coalition of the Willing met in Kiev on Saturday. Coalition of the Willing. I'm pretty sure I used a term like that. A coalition of the willing in Europe who is going to step up and save Ukraine as the U.S. just so happens to step away and start focusing on China. Man, I told you, did I not? Been saying it for months. Met in Kiev on Saturday. Putin's offer of direct talks followed that intervention. On Sunday, Trump then wrote on post-social media that Ukraine should agree immediately and that it would provide clarity on whether there was a way to end the war. Blah, blah, blah. I just read this to you. We await a full and lasting ceasefire starting from tomorrow to provide necessary basis for diplomacy, Zelensky said. And so he's just saying, hey, we wait for your ceasefire, which you said you're not going to do tomorrow, so that we then can agree to your negotiations in Istanbul, which you said there wouldn't be a ceasefire before. In a late-night address on Saturday, Putin invited Ukraine to take part in serious negotiations over the war, which began with Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Putin said he could not rule out the possibility that the talks could result in a Russian and Ukraine agreeing a new truce, but did not address the calls for a 30-day ceasefire directly. Yes, he did. He's been saying it for a week, right? He's been saying this for quite some time. This is not something new. He has said no to a 30-day ceasefire. He said it on Friday night. He said no. So he does not need to address a new proposal for the same thing in a I mean, I'm pretty sure he did say that he wasn't going to go for a 30-day ceasefire in his speech, but whatever. The Russian leader said this would be the first step towards long-term lasting peace rather than a prologue to more armed hostilities after the Ukrainian armed forces get new armaments and personnel. Holy shit, what have I been saying the whole time? The only thing the Ukrainians are going to use this for is getting arms into the country and continuing mobilization. After feverish trench digging and the establishment of new command posts. Exactly. Either, take a pause, start building defense lines behind where you're at because you're running out of time to do it. That's basically what Putin is saying, and he's saying he's not going to go for it. So, yeah, all in all, guys, I just would not hold my breath for this shit at all. I don't think it's going to result in anything, and I just don't think it's even worth anybody's time. All right, let's take a moment here and catch our breath. All right. Okay. Let us talk about India and Pakistan. A lot has happened in a week. A lot is continuing to happen. We have a situation that has developed where India and Pakistan are fighting over the Kashmir region and water rights, basically. The Indians have stopped the flow of a good amount of water, fresh water, into Pakistan. India controls 80% of the water flow into Pakistan. So that was sort of where this whole thing came to a head. There was also a terror attack by a group that India labels a Pakistani-sponsored terrorist organization. India has similar groups that are in the Kashmir region that they back. And this terror attack was the catalyst for 9 Indian strikes, missile strikes inside of Pakistan on terrorist cell targets in the country. Pakistan did not take very kindly to this. Pakistani civilians were killed. Pakistan then said that they would retaliate. There were a few days of drone incursions into the neighboring countries. And then finally, we got a Pakistani response. Pakistan launched a number of basically like HIMARS strikes into Pakistan, struck some of the nearby air bases and stuff like that inside of Pakistan. India then struck targets in Pakistan again, which came just moments before a pre-agreed upon ceasefire that started at a specific time. So India sort of got in some heavy hits right before the ceasefire went into effect. The ceasefire was then broken multiple times throughout the night. Now it seems like everything is beginning to settle, but the Indians are calling it basically like a temporary understanding, not a ceasefire and not a truce or anything like that. So you got to watch that very closely. But the Indians did get a pretty bad bloody nose. When they went to launch those 9 missiles, Pakistani aircraft were dispersed and took off and engaged these aircraft in what the Pakistanis are claiming is one of the largest BVR battles in all of aerial combat history. I think that a lot of this is propaganda, so I'm just going to dismiss the whole record-breaking aspect of it. I have no idea. I can only tell you what they're telling me. But the outcome of this was of this BVR engagement. We don't know about any Pakistani planes that were lost. They could have been. We just don't know. We didn't get any visual evidence for that. There were not really many claims of any Pakistani planes being shot down outside of some government official claims that really didn't amount to anything. So still open-minded about that. Still looking for evidence on that. And I will take you guys through some of the hits. We have some of the videos and stuff. But for at least three, but we think four, the information space who's trying to decipher, India has a major censorship regime, kind of like Ukraine going. So it's hard to get information out of India. The Indians, then they lost at least one Rafale aircraft. They lost one Su-30, potentially a MiG-29. We don't know. It's kind of hard to delineate between crashes and wrecks, but we do know for sure that a Rafale was shot down. The French intelligence confirmed this to CNN. U.S. intelligence then confirmed it as well. The only people who have yet to confirm it is India themselves. So we're just sort of waiting for that to play out. But so Pakistan took some serious hits. They lost a couple airmen at one of their air bases when it was struck by a ballistic missile, I believe. A few tarmacs were uplifted. But most seriously, and really where I think the biggest issue came from, and this is why I believe the U.S. stepped in almost immediately to try to achieve this ceasefire, was because the Indians struck a Pakistani nuclear facility. And I think the Pakistani military and government were about this close to launching a retaliation for that. I don't know what that retaliation would have looked like, but I think this really scared the Pakistani government because it's unhinged. It's like, it would be like Putin striking the nuclear power plants in Ukraine. It's just, you don't do it for so many reasons. You could strike the substations around it, right? Do damage to the infrastructure around it, but you would never strike the actual nuclear material just because it doesn't, I mean, that's just asking for massive escalation right away, right? And especially between two nuclear armed superpowers. And we do have proof of that. I'm actually going to go over to my Twitter account right now. And we can see, I'll take you guys through some of the strikes. So here is a Pakistani provided satellite image. I don't know how to pronounce this. Udhampur airbase. And it does appear as though the Pakistani strike struck a non-airfield related building. So that means it's not a hangar for aircraft. It doesn't directly support the airplanes on the airfield. This is a administrative building of some sort, and the Pakistani military claims that this is a HQ for this airbase. So they definitely struck this target. It looks like it was a specifically chosen target to strike at this airbase. So there is one confirmed hit. Here we have an Indian provided satellite photo of the Baholari airbase. Baholari. I'm sorry, guys. I have no idea. Airbase in Pakistan. This is where the Pakistani government admitted that a few airmen were killed. I believe that they were killed inside of this hangar facility right here. And I don't know if there were aircraft in here. I'm not sure. Here you can see the target before and here after. All right, moving down here, we can see a possible hit on the, again, this is very low quality satellite imagery, so it's hard. We can see a potential hit on the runway here, the tarmac. Again, nothing before, after, some obfuscation of the image. So it's hard to tell with this one. I said possible strike on this one. Here is the Noor Khan airbase that was struck. There's two claims here. Over here, they say that this building was potentially hit, but it's really hard to tell. That's very minimal damage. And then over here, you can see this highlighted area. This is where they say one of the likely Storm Shadow missiles or Scalp, British or French missiles struck a target. Again, not significant damage. They say 2 trucks were hit here, but it's very hard to tell. They highlighted it, which makes the damage assessment even more difficult. All right, moving down, here is images of another Pakistani base. You guys can read it here. Jacobabad, Pakistan. Here we can see another large structure was hit by Storm Shadow, or I'm sorry, Scalp. I believe they have Scalps. It's almost the same missile system, but one is French. That targeted this large structure here. All right. Here is the large crater impact at Sargodha, Pakistan airbase. This is the one where we saw a video of the guys on the ground looking at this probably 20-meter wide crater in the tarmac. And here is the base. Here is a radar site that they struck. There's a radar strike helipad. This is a nuclear facility that's built into a mountain. And as you can see from the video right here, they struck the entrance tunnel into the facility. So a very scary instance happening there. Interesting to say the least. And I believe this is why there was so much international step in to try to solve this. I think that we were very close to seeing a tactical nuclear exchange, like this close. And I still think that this ceasefire isn't going to hold because both sides are still talking about this like it's unsettled. And I mean, it's Kashmir, so it's always going to be unsettled. Here is one of the images of the Rafale getting picked up at the location that it crashed. Again, the Indian government has not confirmed any of these aircraft losses, but they have very suspiciously been deflecting and dodging the question nonstop. Here we can see a Scalp Scalp cruise missile that was intercepted by Pakistani air defense. Here we can see the Su-30 or potentially MiG. This looks like a Russian aircraft. Here you can see the Indian military surrounding it. According to the Indian government, no pilots were lost, though, and that kind of tracks with the number of ejection seats we saw. So, yeah. All right, guys. That is all I have to show from my Twitter. But, yeah, so a lot of exchanging of munitions, a lot of cross-border firing along the line of contact in Kashmir. I don't think this is over, and I think that I will be talking about this in a little while, although I'm not super excited because this has to be one of the worst information spaces that has ever existed ever. If you thought Ukrainian propaganda or Russian propaganda was bad, my God, you have no idea. The amount of fakes, the amount of nonsense, the amount of yelling, and the outright denial from both sides that anything is happening all the time. India is so much worse than Pakistan, though. The Pakistani government has admitted their casualties. They're talking about everything that's happened very openly. The Indians have been absolutely about their casualties, their losses. And this information space is just god-awful. It has to be one of the lowest, grossest, like I just can't explain it. They if you say anything that does not confirm their bias, they are the most, like, both sides are the most patriotic nationalistic groups that are hyper emotional about everything. It's just wild. All right. What else do we have? Israel, there's some stuff going on. Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu seem to be splitting, which is interesting. They're talking about Trump just today came out. I think that there's some very strong disagreement between these two right now. I don't know if it's just theater, if they're just trying to separate themselves from Israel, if Israel's about to attack Iranian nuclear facilities or do a larger campaign in Yemen or something like that. It's very possible that the U.S. is just trying to distance itself. But since the last time I talked, the U.S. presence in the Red Sea has completely disappeared. There was an agreed upon settlement between the Houthis and the United States, where the Houthis are going to continue to do whatever they do to shipping in the Red Sea. They're going to continue striking at Israel with ballistic missiles. But as long as the Houthis don't attack U.S. assets in the region, they're not going to interfere with each other. Very interesting. It kind of seems like we're just walking away after months and months of striking the country and not really achieving anything. Like I said, punching sand. There's been years and years of Saudi Arabian strikes on that country. We're not going to do anything with that. And we were losing a good number of Reaper drones too, a significant number of Reaper drones and F-18 Hornets. The U.S. lost 2 F-18 Super Hornets over this extended Yemen campaign. One or two fell off of an aircraft carrier, I believe, and then the other one crashed due to I can't remember, mechanical. That one was a couple months ago, but 2 very recently fell off of the aircraft carrier or crashed while landing due to maneuvers because of Houthi ballistic missiles. So I think the U.S. just basically cut their losses and said, we're going to get out of here. And if Israel wants to handle this, they're able to handle that. Trump has also come out and said that he's going to have a multi-nation meeting between, I think, the UAE and Saudi Arabia on the recognition of a Palestinian state. So that's also a very crazy, wild thing to just come out of left field. Trump is being a crazy boy with Israel. And the Iran nuclear talks are sort of meeting a dead end, where the U.S. is now demanding that Iran completely reduce their uranium enrichment, and Iran is basically saying no. So that's a short update on what's going on in that part of the world. Israel is calling up more reserve units to increase the amount of pressure being put on Gaza. And basically now they're just talking about the ethnic cleansing of Gaza openly. It's not even like oh, well, we're just trying to beat Hamas. No, Benjamin Netanyahu came out today talking about these Palestinians are going to have to find somewhere to go. The problem is the neighboring countries won't accept them. Yeah, no shit, dude. Nobody wants to deal with a refugee crisis into their country that you created. So, yeah, that's sort of what's happening with Israel. It's a lot of chaos right now. I think what you might end up seeing here is that Benjamin Netanyahu government is about to be overturned. I think that is a very real possibility. And basically everybody who was in his cabinet has left, all of the original people. And now that's sort of what we're looking at. So, yeah, I have some questions to answer here. It's all a giant show for Trump. It's a game of optics and narrative framing. See Trump, the other side is the obstacle to peace. Yeah, you're talking about Ukraine for sure. I absolutely agree with you there. It's all just about PR. Both sides fell for the Arma 3 videos in a media war. Yeah, no joke. I saw more Arma 3 during that Pakistani-Indian exchange than I ever have in Ukraine. Will Russia take Odessa? British and French want it. I don't know. It depends on how far this war goes. If we don't see a negotiated settlement during this exchange of peace process, then I believe that Odessa's on the table. I believe Kharkov, Sumy, Poltava, basically everything east of the Dnieper and everything south of Kryvyi Rog is on the table for sure. Yeah. All right, guys. All right. Frank, how do you know my mom? Be honest. How do you know her? Why are you saying Happy Mother's Day to my mom, huh? You tell me how you know my mom. Let's see. You promise this stuff to tamp down pressure, then don't follow up or do anything. Also, part 2. Huh? Huh? Calibrated. Middle East, nothing happening. India, nothing happening. And Ukraine, soon to be nothing happening. Nothing ever happens, boys. Nothing ever happens. Question. What do you think will happen next in the whole India-Pakistan situation? I think that there's going to be some ceasefire violations. I think the Indians are on a war path right now. They are acting like they're at war. The Pakistanis are acting like they're on the defensive, and not like that the Pakistanis can't achieve anything, and not that the Indians are just full blown. I think that the Indians have a plan. I think that they had a plan, and it's sort of gone awry. But I think that there's a large contingent of the Indian political class and domestic population that wants to see this Kashmir thing finished. So yeah, I think it's going to escalate. And I think that has to do with a lot of, factors. I think one of the biggest factors being that the U.S. hegemony is fading, and we're just entering into this multipolar world where countries are now going to try to take what is theirs. Right? There's no world police dominating the political sphere. So, who would you bet uses nukes first, India or Pakistan? Probably Pakistan. Pakistan is just the general weaker army, lower population. And India seems to be willing to escalate much further and quicker than the Pakistanis are. So I think that the Pakistanis would be forced to use one more immediate than the Indians. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap it up there. That has been an hour and 2 minutes. Thank you so much for tuning in. This week, Brian Berletic will be coming on. I was going to have him on last week, but we both agreed to delay one day because we were both exhausted. We have to do it at weird hours. He has to do it in the morning. I have to do it at night. And then we planned on doing it the next day, which was Friday. And then everything sort of popped off. And I was like, we'll just stall and talk about all of this next week. So guys, next week, it's Sunday. Next week, or is Sunday's the beginning of the week? This week, you will have an episode with Brian Berletic. Be on the lookout for that. Also, you will definitely be having another live stream from me because there's so much going on, and we will have to talk about it. What happens with the ceasefire, what all of that stuff, what happens with India and Pakistan. There will be news this week, so be on the lookout for those. Follow me on my Telegram and my Twitter. You can find those links in the description of the YouTube video. That is where you can stay up to date on everything happening in the world, as well as everything happening with my live streams. Guys, I love you all so much. Please be safe, take care, and have an amazing Sunday and the rest of your week. Goodbye.